It is great to be out of Washington, D.C. and back in America. I grew up not far from here in a little town, a little blue-collar community called Zachary. Now, when I grew up in Zachary, it was a small, as I said, blue-collar community, about 3,000 people. I loved it. Still love it. I loved Zachary High School. I know some people have difficult memories, I'll say, from high school. Not me. I loved high school. I cared about two things. I cared about basketball, and I cared about cheerleaders. And I wasn't very good at either one, but I had a lot of fun trying. And I remember growing up in Zachary, we would come over and play. We'd come the back way through Pride. We'd come over and play Denham Springs in basketball. And I have marveled at the growth of Livingston Parish. Thank you for contributing to that growth. Thank you for the jobs you create for our people. The people of Livingston Parish and most of the people, our people in Louisiana, just get up every day, they go to work, they obey the law, they pay their taxes, they try to do the right thing by their kids and teach them morals, and they try to save a little money for retirement. I wish all Americans were like the people of Louisiana. The people of Livingston Parish and most Louisianians understand that government didn't make America great. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things made this country the greatest country in all of human history. The people of Livingston Parish understand that the Bill of Rights is not an a la carte menu. Every right counts. And they understand that the purpose of the Bill of Rights is not to control people. It's to control government. So I want to thank all of my people in Livingston Parish for giving so much to our state and our country. I'll talk a little bit more about Washington, D.C. in a second. First, let me talk about money. We all know that the most important things in life aren't things. But a smart person, somewhat cynically, said one day, you don't have to be rich and famous to be happy. You just have to be rich. And let me tell you why I'm raising this subject of money. I sit on the Appropriations Committee. We have one other member of Congress who serves on the Appropriations Committee in the House. Now, my job as a United States Senator is to be more than a money collector. But also, part of my job as a member of the Appropriations Committee is to make sure that Louisiana gets its fair share. Because we pay a lot in taxes. And we send that money to Washington, D.C. And sometimes we need a little of it back. I don't want to ever live through the meltdown, health-wise and economically, from the coronavirus, ever again. But we faced an emergency. And part of my job as a member of the Appropriations Committee was to make sure that the people of Louisiana and Louisiana businesses could be able to sustain themselves through this pandemic. The United States Congress appropriated $55 billion to the people of Louisiana to deal with the coronavirus. $55 billion. And as a member of the Appropriations Committee, I know every single penny that comes to Louisiana. $23 billion of that money went to state government, which shared it with local government. $22 billion of that money went directly to people through stimulus checks, through the PPP program and other programs. Now, I didn't vote for the mass coronavirus bill, the one that was that Congress passed in March of 2021. It was $1.9 trillion. We were all worried it would tip us into inflation. It was a coronavirus bill that had nothing to do with coronavirus. It was more of a Green New Deal and social welfare bill. It was unnecessary. It was too expensive. And I voted against it. And unfortunately, it did tip us into inflation. More on that later. I'll tell you a quick story. I, of course, will never forget, nor will you, the Great Flood of 2016. That was a situation where we needed some of the money back that we sent to Washington. And I was so proud and in such gratitude to the American taxpayer. They helped us out. The American people sent us $3 billion to deal with the flood. I'll share with you this story. I wish government always worked this way, but it doesn't. You recall, many of you do, I'm sure, the duplication of benefits issue. When we were hit by the flood, FEMA came in, for which we're grateful. And FEMA was pushing SBA loans very hard. And a lot of my people took SBA loans. Later, Congress passed a direct grant stimulus program. So you didn't have to pay the money back. We do that in all parts of the country that are victims of natural disasters. And I'm thinking, well, this is good. People can take the grant and use it to pay back the SBA loan. But that's not how Washington, D.C. works. In Washington, D.C., they have this agency called the OMB. It's sort of like the Division of Administration in Baton Rouge. OMB is the Office of Management and Budget. It's kind of like the fiscal officer for the federal government. And when I suggested that my people were going to use the grant money to pay back the loans, you would have thought the world was going to spin off its axis. I mean, they raised fresh hell. They said, you can't do that. The loan, you're not eligible for the grant if you took the loan. And I said, well, my people wouldn't have taken the loan if they knew they were going to get the grant. Duh. And we argued, and we cussed, and we spit at each other. And I introduced bills, and I was making no progress. None. And I couldn't get my colleagues in the Senate interested in passing legislation. So one day, I said, well, I'm going to throw deep. I called the President of the United States. And he called me right back. And I outlined the problem, and he said, Kennedy, come on over here. Let's have lunch. I said, wow, okay. So I went over to see President Trump. And we had lunch, and we talked about things in general. And then he said, tell me about the issue, and I explained it to him. And I said, Mr. President, all I'm not asking for anything extra. I know common sense is illegal in Washington, D.C., but I'm asking for a little common sense. Let people use the grant money to pay back the loans. And I'll never forget. He didn't say, well, I've got to take it to the cabinet. I've got to appoint a task force. I've got to have a summit of consultants and experts and Leonardo DiCaprio. He picked up the phone, he called the director of OMB. And he said, do what Kennedy wants. Do what Kennedy wants. And it was done in 2 weeks. Just like that. Now, OMB is still mad at me. But, you know, I told them, I said, you know, how do I sleep? I said this to the bureaucrats at OMB. I said, how do I sleep knowing that you're mad at me? With the fan on. And I'll never forget that. That's how government ought to work. But sadly, a lot of times it doesn't. Now look, I didn't come to give a political speech. And in about 5 or 10 minutes, I'm going to shut up because I'm going to take your questions. But part of my job, and I think part of the reason you elected me, is to tell you what I think. And I do that. I don't know whether this is a blessing or a curse, but I have the right to remain silent, but not the ability. I think the people of Louisiana and the American people deserve straight talk. And being as fair and objective as I can, here's what I see throughout Louisiana and throughout our wonderful country. Most Americans and most Louisianians think our country is headed in the wrong direction. After 14 months, they have reached a determination about what the Biden administration stands for. And before I go any further, I want to tell you, I don't hate anybody. I do not. When I pray to God, please, God, don't let me hate. It's hard sometimes. You know, it is hard sometimes. You know, some days you want to follow Jesus and slap somebody at the same time. But I don't hate anybody. I get along with all of my colleagues. I even got Senator Bernie Sanders to smile one time. I enjoy all of them. We don't agree on everything. There are a lot of big egos in the United States Senate. You know, about most of them believe in God. The rest of them think they are God. But I don't hate anybody. I look for grace wherever I can find it. And I've always believed that there's always something to be thankful for. So what I'm about to say, I don't say out of hatred. I'm trying to be factual. And I think this is factual. After 14 months, we know that President Biden believes in bigger government. He believes in higher taxes. He believes in more spending. He believes in more debt. He believes in an open border. He and his colleagues, if they had their way, would try to turn every cop in America into a social worker. He is pro-abortion, and he is pro-weaker military. I say that because I just got through reviewing his proposed budget to Congress. Now, the president has the right to believe those things. This is America. You're not free if you can't say what you believe. But I don't think that most Americans believe in those things. I don't. From where I sit, this administration has mismanaged Congress. It has mismanaged COVID. It has mismanaged our border. It has mismanaged our streets. It has mismanaged Afghanistan. And I pray to God that, and all the angels, that it doesn't mismanage Ukraine. It's also mismanaged inflation, which is gutting the American people like a fish. And it all starts with oil. Now, everything is going up. And I knew when we passed that, I didn't vote for it, but when they passed that $1.9 trillion so-called coronavirus bill that had nothing to do with coronavirus, I knew it was going to happen. This is classic inflation. It has elements of both demand pull and cost push inflation. It's easy to recognize. And unless you were, in the quad playing Frisbee during Econ 101, you could see this coming. And I pleaded with my Democratic colleagues not to pass the bill. But they did anyway, and here we are. But it starts with oil. It's no secret that President Biden has a boot on the throat of the oil and gas industry. And his energy policy is wind, solar, and wishful thinking. That's the president's energy policy. Now, I'm not against wind and solar. I support wind and solar. I support hydrogen. I support nuclear power. I support hydrothermal. But I also support oil and gas. And this is the greatest economy in all of human history, and 80% of our energy comes from oil and gas. And it is for the foreseeable future and maybe forever. Because I trust the American ingenuity to figure out how to burn that oil and natural gas in a cleaner manner. But the president, nonetheless, is the president, and he has filled his administration chock full, you wouldn't believe it, chock full of left of Lenin, neo-socialist wokers. When they break a shoestring, they blame it on climate change. And they're easy to recognize. These people that the president has put in charge, and they've got a clean grasp on my friends in the Democratic Party. These folks are easy to recognize. They hate George Washington. They hate Thomas Jefferson. They hate Abraham Lincoln. They hate Dr. Seuss. And they hate Mr. Potato Head. And all of them think that they are smarter and more virtuous than the rest of us, and we ought to shut up and do what they say and use the pronouns that they tell us to use, and if we behave, they might let us eat meat occasionally. And the American people don't like it. They don't like it. We use oil to make virtually every product that we enjoy, everything from pharmaceuticals to plastics. And once again, to try to be even-handed, the president has said, I am going to shut down oil and gas in America in the interest of the environment. That's his position, and I think that's a fair way of stating it. But if you think about it, he knows we can't do without oil. So instead of letting us produce our own oil and be energy independent, he wants us to buy foreign oil, buy oil from foreign countries. You know how that oil gets here? The foreign countries put it in tankers that use 2,000 gallons of fuel an hour and emit 8 tons of carbon dioxide an hour. And this is how he's going to clean up the environment. The irony is rich. That's just a special kind of stupid. I mean, that's what I mean. Common sense in Washington, D.C. is illegal. Okay, you're asking, I'm sure. What does Kennedy stand for? In life, and especially in Washington, D.C., you got to watch what people do, not what they say. You got to watch what they do. So here's what I stand for. When my party, in my first 4 years in Washington, D.C., was in control, we controlled the House, the Senate, and the presidency. Here's what we did. And here's what I believe. We cut taxes because we understood that the American people can spend the money they earn better than government can. We cut taxes. We increased wages. Wages for those among us at the lower end of the wage scale went up twice as fast as those at the upper end of the wage scale. But everybody's wages and income went up. In 2019, the median real income increase on average for American families was $4,000. We increased wages. We delivered 3.5% unemployment. We delivered the lowest unemployment rate in the history of this country for African Americans and Hispanic Americans. We created 8 million new jobs pre-COVID. We deregulated the economy. We gave much better health care to our veterans. We beat back ISIS. We secured the border. We controlled inflation. It was under 2%. We strengthened our military. We stood up to China and Russia and North Korea and Iran, and we confirmed 234 of the finest women and men that you will ever meet to become federal judges, including 3 new members of the United States Supreme Court. And these men and women understand, once again, that the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, is not an a la carte menu. And their job is not to rewrite the Constitution every other Thursday to advance some personal agenda that the voters won't accept. Now that's what I believe. And if I ever have the opportunity, by God, I'm going to do it again. It is such an honor to represent you in Washington. God, you'll never know. I'll never completely get used to it when I stand on the Senate floor and the acting president says, you know, the senator from Louisiana. I still get goosebumps. I still get goosebumps. It's the honor of a lifetime. I'm not going to lie to you, I can't win every fight. But I'll keep this commitment. I may not be able to win every fight. But by God, I will refuse to be beaten as long as I have a breath in my body. So thank you for the honor of representing you. Can I take questions?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'll be glad to answer questions. Yes, sir. I really don't want to talk about Johnny Depp, okay?
Everybody else does.
I know. It is kind of weird. It is deeply weird. I'm sorry. It is deeply, deeply weird, the whole thing.
Question I need to ask is about carbon capture.
Yes, sir.
Technology. It seems like Washington is pushing that down to Washington, Louisiana, especially Livingston Parish. There's 2 or 3 locations already being discussed. And I guess I'm asking about the technology and the safety aspect of it and your position on carbon capture.
Sure. Carbon capture technology, and that is when you burn, as you know, fossil fuels, it emits carbon, and you capture it. And sometimes you can store it in the ground. A lot of times you can just reuse it. We have oil wells here in Livingston Parish that are using CO2 to make the wells produce more oil. It's a new technology, and we're learning about it. I think it has great potential, and I think it can help with our environment. Here's where I disagree. Now, I have a lot of Democratic colleagues, they won't tell you, but they don't believe in carbon capture. They think as the private sector figures out these innovative ways of addressing some of our problems, that if not all, but some of my Democratic colleagues believe that they support carbon capture, it'll hurt them in their fight to get rid of oil and gas. And I can tell you, this President Biden, I don't know how many appointments he's made, but thousands. These people hate oil and gas. They hate oil, they hate gas, they hate petrochemical. And they're going to do everything they possibly can to kill the industry. They are. What else? Yes, sir.
Do you mind speaking on the National Flood Insurance Program and NFIP reauthorization?
Yes, it sucks.
Amen.
Look, we have a national, it's very hard, you can do it, but it's very hard to buy flood insurance in the private sector. So a lot of years ago, Congress created a National Flood Insurance Program. We've got about 5 million policyholders across the country, more being added every day. We got about 500,000 in Louisiana. And it's an insurer of last resort. And the people of Louisiana need that insurance. They need it. And we don't just sit around and accept the insurance and do nothing. We are constantly trying to improve our drainage, and we're constantly trying to build levees, and we're constantly trying to do better. Now, there are a lot of people in Washington, D.C. that think, oh, the flood insurance program is for all these rich people who have a third home on the beach, and we're subsidizing. That may be in other parts, true in other parts of the country, but it's not true in Louisiana. My people are working people. I have worked on bills after bills after bills, none of which we've been able to pass, to try to improve the flood insurance program. Now, unbeknownst to me, I sort of heard rumblings. FEMA has decided to take the problem and take the problem as its own, and of course, as the government agencies often do, they just made it worse. Okay, this is what government agencies in Washington do 9 times out of 10. They figure out what didn't work, and then they try to do it again. This risk rating 2.0 is a FEMA baby. Only President Biden can stop it. I have introduced legislation to stop it, but I can't get Democratic votes to pass that legislation. I need 10 Democratic votes to pass it. I can't get them as long as President Biden tells them not to vote for my bill. We have no idea how these new rates have been devised by FEMA. We have no idea. They're using an algorithm, I know that much. They won't share any information with us. And they're raising our rates. And they have the right to do it. They can't. We did pass a bill some time ago. They can't raise your rates higher than 18% a year. But if they raise it 18% a year this year, next year, this year, next year, next year, next year, sooner or later, your insurance is unaffordable. And what's the point of the insurance? If nobody can afford it, what's the point? I'm not asking for something for nothing. I'm asking first to understand, how did you come up with these numbers? How did you come up with these numbers? And number two, how can we work in good faith to make the flood insurance program structurally sound, but also able to do its job? I mean, 50% of the commerce in America is done along the coastline. But so far we've made no headway. And there's only one person who can fix it, and that's Joe Biden. And so far it's been like talking to the wind. Yes, ma'am.
I have a two-part question, and part two is only because
Mike, bring me some water.
I feel that you have a sense of humor, so hence is the two-part question.
Yes, ma'am.
First part is, where do you think they're going to land on student forgiveness of student loan debt?
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, if it does pass, can I have the website so I can get reimbursed for everything I've paid in for student loans?
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. Question of student loan debt. I think the president's going to forgive all or part of it. Actually, that's the wrong word, forgive. It's not really a loan. He isn't canceling anybody's loans. He's just transferring those loans to people who don't owe them. That's what it is. Now, I don't know how he picks student debt. What about people who are fighting cancer and incurred health care bills? Yeah. What about the woman who said, you know what, I'm going to try to start a business and create jobs for my community. And put a second mortgage on the house, and that didn't work out. Why not help them? Why not help our churches that were damaged as a result of a natural disaster, fire, flood? They borrowed the money. Their congregation didn't come back. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. Why not help them? It's all politics. That's how desperate some people are in Washington, D.C. They think the American people are such morons that they'll buy us. They can buy us like a sack of potatoes. And that's the mentality of these people. Let me say it again. This is America. You can believe what you want. And you should be able to say what you believe. You're not free if you can't say what you think or express yourself. But I'm free too. And I can say what I think. And the people who are promoting this nonsense are the same people who want to defund the police. They're the same people who think America was wicked when it was founded, and that Americans are more wicked today, that we're all racist and misogynistic and ignorant. Why? Because we don't agree with their agenda. That's what these people think. But the American people and the people of Louisiana, they're busy. I said before, they get up every day, they're working. They don't have time to read Aristotle every day. But by God, they figure it out. And they figured this out coming out of Washington, D.C., and they don't like it. And I mentioned inflation. The best place to find lower or cheaper gas and cheaper food prices is in the voting booth. So I hope you'll think about that. Yeah, you asked me a two-part question.
That was kind of a two-part. I have so many questions for you, but if you're taking another question, tell me about yesterday or the day before yesterday, President Biden has announced that he wants to prohibit the sale of 9mm and 9mm weapons. How much teeth do you think he's going to get with that?
I just put their microphone. Well, what happened in Texas and what happened in Buffalo and what has happened too many times was a tragedy. America is a big, wide, open, diverse, sometimes dysfunctional, sometimes imperfect, but always good country. And like any other large, open, free society, we have crazy people. And the thing you have to remember about crazy people is they're crazy. Now, I don't know why bad things happen to good people. I don't. If I make it to heaven, I'm going to ask. But my experience has been that you can't stop every bad thing in this world by passing a law. And you can't stop every bad thing or every person in this world by giving the federal government more power. We have hundreds of gun control laws at the federal level. We have hundreds more at the local level, especially in our major cities. If gun control laws worked, Chicago would be Mayberry. I think what we need to concentrate on is mental health and school safety. I don't think we have a gun control problem. I think we have an idiot control problem. And that's what I'm focused on, is the mental health aspect. In terms of, before I left DC, we tried to pass a bill to direct our Department of Homeland Security to work in Washington, to work with every single school in America and make sure that they were implementing the best practices that we know of to secure that school. Senator Chuck Schumer blocked the bill. He blocked the bill! Now that speaks volumes to me. I'm not saying this about all of my colleagues, but many of my colleagues would like to ban guns. They would. They started on what they call assault rifles. And keep in mind that a lot of these folks know nothing about guns. They've never touched a gun. If I was showing them a gun, first thing I'd explain to them is the end with the hole is the dangerous part, okay? I mean, they know nothing about it. But they want to ban AR-15s, and now President Biden has said he wants to ban 9mm. I don't know why 9mm. I don't know why not 45s, why not a 38, you know what I mean? None of this makes any sense. I'm not going to vote for it. And I don't think Congress will pass it. Well, when a radical Muslim jihadist blows up a school and kills the school children, we're all told, correctly, don't blame all of our Muslim friends for the acts of a few. And I believe that's right. So how come so many of these meatheads in D.C. want to blame 100 million plus gun owners in America for the acts of a few? I think we ought to concentrate on the problem. I don't know if we can solve it. But I know this, we don't get rid of drunk drivers by stopping all sober drivers for driving. And I think the same principle holds. But we'll see what legislation they come up with, and I'll consider it carefully as I do all other. But I know what the agenda is of a lot of these people. Last one. Yes, sir.
What's your opinion on getting more Go Mesa funds to the states and parishes?
The question is Go Mesa funds. Well, first we've got to get the president to let us drill. It's just that simple. He's frozen new leases in the Gulf of Mexico. He's frozen them in ANWR. It hasn't gotten a lot of publicity, but his Federal Energy Regulatory Commission just promulgated new rules implementing the National Environmental Policy Act. Now, what does all that mean? It means they're going to shut down every pipeline they can. And every day, the banking regulators who work for the Biden administration are whispering to our banks, don't loan money to oil and gas companies. Don't loan money to oil and gas companies. So that's why you see production curtailing over time. And I was reading a report by J.P. Morgan, does an annual energy report every year. It's very good. And I was reading week before last. They're predicting that at the rate we're going in 2030, just 8 years from now, 8 years from now, energy demand in America and in the world is going to be 20% greater than supply. You know what that's going to do to prices. The demand for oil, they're predicting, is going to be up 10%, natural gas 18%. You know what that's going to do to prices? Now, some in Washington think that's just great. They're like a gopher in soft dirt, man. They love it. Because they think higher gas prices means people have to buy electric vehicles. like we all have $100,000 lying around we can buy. Or we can spend on electric vehicles. So a good chunk of our Go Mesa money comes from drilling in the Gulf. And these are $100 billion bets by the major oil companies. And they don't know if they're going to find oil, but when they spud a well, it's going to be $100 million. They're not stupid. You know, they're not going to spud a well and spend $100 million if they think by the time they finish it and start producing oil and gas that the federal government is going to outlaw. And that's what's going on in America. And I don't, if we don't correct this attitude, and of course China, India, Russia, they're just sitting there grinning. They're happy as they can be. They're not, they haven't declared war on their natural resources. Folks, it's been a treat. Thank you. God bless you. God bless this wonderful parish. And God bless this wonderful country. Thanks.